Hi, my name is Kate and welcome to my channel. And in today's conversation with Rachelle Garcia Seliga, who is a midwife and also an author and trainer of Innate Postpartum Care Certification Program, we're going to talk about birth preparation and how to prepare for birth, thinking outside of box and maybe thinking of something outside of just traditional birth classes. It was a sort of a waking up call for myself, for sure. I hope you will find it useful, and if so, please like the video. And now to Rachelle.
I mean, if we're really going to talk about like where do we begin with this, our life as a woman is a continuum, right? So each stage is building on the next. As a little girl growing up within our respective cultural context, as a little girl growing up within this collective cultural context, what kind of information are we learning about who we are as girls and young women and what it means to be a girl and a young woman on this planet? What are we learning about our own bodies and how we're learning about who we are as a girl, as a young woman is through our mom, first and foremost. So what way does our mother take care of her own womanly self? What kind of relationship does our mom have to her own body, to her own genitals, to her own sexuality, to her own sensuality? What is our mother's own relationship to her bleeding each month? Are we growing up in an environment where it's normal and natural and we're seeing our mothers bleed, and it's part of, we know her monthly cycle and we see our mothers resting during that time? Or are we growing up seeing our mothers shove tampons up their vaginas when they're bleeding and go on with life as normal and maybe take some aspirin because they have cramps and there's no pause, So it's like, what is the information that's going to our girls from an early age about how to be a woman and what does it mean to be a woman? And then if we bring the men in what ways are the men, meaning the fathers, treating the mothers? How are they taking care of them or not? How are they talking to them or not? Because the men are giving the examples to our daughters of what kind of men they're going to end up getting together with. Okay. So an easy way to think about it for the men is, am I being the kind of man that I want my daughter to marry? And if the man is not, it's like an easy way to look at how can I change, right? So that's from the man's perspective. And from the woman's perspective is, am I in a relationship with my body, with myself, that I want my daughter to mirror, that I want my daughter to imitate? And that is the entrance point to birth. Because what's happening is that we're being educated from birth, okay? We're born into a medicalized system that separates, that sterilizes, that does all of these things. And then we're conditioned by our respective and collective cultures about what it means to be in a female body, so that by the time most of us arrive to birth, we're disconnected from our bodies, we're disconnected from our vulvas, from our vaginas, from our womanly parts. We have sterilized ourselves, either literally or metaphorically, right? Maybe we've been on birth control pills from the time we were 13 years old or some other form of hormonal birth control. We're disconnected from our cycles. We're disconnected from the cycles of the earth. We have had period cramps our entire life, and we don't even know that it's simple actually to change that. So we arrive to birth thinking that instead of, our bodies know how to do this, and this is going to be a beautiful experience, that this is something that needs to be managed, and we don't know anything about it, and it definitely needs intervention in order to be quote unquote safe, because we don't feel safe in our own bodies. That's like foundationally what it is, right? We don't feel safe in our own bodies as women. So how can we arrive to birth and feel safe in one of the biggest experiences of our life when we haven't had that conditioning to begin with for the whole of our lives? So there's so many places to start, right? When we're talking about, well, how do we change this? How do we shift this around? We shift it around first by how we are in relationship with our own body as mothers, right? And then as we grow out of our family's homes and we're learning this information perhaps for the first time, then we have to grieve what we have not been taught seriously. And then we have to take responsibility for what we don't know and understand that we don't know what we don't know because the collective culture has tried to hide it from us because it is our source of power.
I'm just thinking, and you're talking about like, how do we try to do something which we never had experience with? Like, how can I give birth connected to myself if my mother, my grandmother, and probably my grandmother sort of never had this experience? And one point is like to know better your body, but I'm thinking, how could someone really think of a mindset? Maybe there is something also about the mindset, how I can approach this, because my birth could be still in a medical environment, right? And there is a lot of unexpected can happen. And I could be physically disconnected with my child without even my consent. And there are many, many things that can happen. So still, what I can do, what else maybe somebody can do to just think of this?
I mean, to me, in the ideal world, what would be happening is like our pregnancies, right, are like more or less 40 weeks long. And to me, like what is the most important work that we could do during our pregnancies is to do this work relative to healing the mother line. So it's like women oftentimes in the modern world want to make like birth plans and like, I want this to happen and I want that to happen. But most women aren't considering, oh, well, how did my mother give birth? And what about my grandmother and my great? Most women aren't considering that. But I'm saying if we pulled in that inquiry into our pregnancy times, and then we did work during pregnancy with like a pre and perinatal psychologist, right? And that was our prenatal care, that we could do a lot of the work that binds us, that like enslaves us to this intergenerational pattern repetition, right? So I believe that we could unwind that beforehand, before pregnancy, but it's like maybe we don't even think about this till pregnancy. I feel like that should be our prenatal care. Instead of women having baby showers and even blessing ways, like I don't know if you all have blessing ways there. And that's cool, you know, but it's like, I've only actually gone to a couple blessing ways, and I was like, we just sat here for like 5 hours making a beaded necklace for this mom. And that's beautiful, right? Everyone's putting their prayer and then the mom wears a necklace, and like that has its place. But I'm like, that's a lot of human resource to make a beaded necklace, right? Like if we directed all of that human resource to, whether it's financially or with energy or with time, like supporting this mother in her passage into motherhood by connecting her with a pre and perinatal psychologist or doing family constellations work or whatever it is to unwind this birth trauma that we all have, this intergenerational birth trauma, then we could literally bless the way, clear the path for this mother to arrive at birth without all of this patterning that she doesn't even know she has, you know? I mean, that's the whole thing. Most people don't even know that they're carrying all this birth trauma. And I've actually seen more men faint at births than I've seen women, right? Because it's not just that the men are seeing blood or something and they're fainting. It's like all the men are carrying their own birth trauma too. So like, how can the male partners show up at birth in this supportive way that we want them to, when they have their own birth trauma too, that they're not even consciously aware of? So it just gets triggered and everyone gets stressed out, including the practitioners in that environment. So everyone's stress and unhealed birth trauma themselves manifests another birth trauma. So it's like we need to do the work ahead of time. Our partners really need to do this work ahead of time. And then we need to choose care practitioners who have done this work too, so that the field of birth, when we get into that space, is as clear as possible. That's what I see.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, from your point of view and from your experience in working with a lot of women, why do we as women, I would say we, bringing myself also there, start to think of this either too late, like 5 days before birth, or suddenly the sudden anxiety or something is happening and we're just like, I need something outside of just knowing the birth process and all this stuff that they give you during this birth preparation classes. So why is it too late, or even after birth, after we have a negative experience, like traumatic experience? And I see a lot of women who, like with their second or third child, they sort of feel that it was really deeply wrong, the first experience, and they want to change it, and then they start to look for something. So why do you think it's so common scenario right now?
I mean, like, we could go to so many levels of answering that question. But like, when I sit with that, you know, and get out of all of the stories, really what I get to is like, we must still have something to learn, right? Because things don't change unless we've learned the lesson. And in my work in maternal health, I'm like, oh, we can stop this. We've already done this. We don't need to keep repeating this. And, you know, like, I train healthcare practitioners in postpartum care, right? And then I give to them a community education series that they bring out to their communities to work with pregnant mothers and families to prepare for their postpartum time. And the only women and families around the entire world, okay, that are coming to these classes are those who have had their second, third, you know, fourth child. It's not first-time parents, because first-time parents are like, I don't need that. I'm going to be fine. My mom's going to be with me for 1 week. My husband has 5 days off of work. And it's only the parents who have gone through it who are like, that was horrible, and I don't want to do that again, who come, right? So when it comes to birth and postpartum time and just our experience of being human, I don't think that we often change until we have really hard experiences, because we're super stubborn as humans, right? So instead of being like, oh, look, she just went through that experience, I can learn from that experience too. I don't actually have to go through it. We don't do that. And we just like go into it and have the same experience. And so do I agree with the medicalization of birth? No. Do I think it's good, the amount of C-sections that are happening around the world? No. Do I understand the damage that this kind of birth is doing to mothers and babies? Yes. And I also can rest in a knowing that if it's happening like this, there must be a reason that it's happening like this to serve the evolution of our consciousness. Okay? Because if it weren't serving that, I don't believe it would be happening. So I feel like there must be something that we need to learn collectively from these experiences to shift human consciousness, you know? And I can say that, like, I had a C-section birth after a 4-day labor. I'm not saying this from like my pedestal of, you know, midwifery model of care. I'm saying this as someone who has gone through this experience, right? That it's like, yes, I believe we are victimized by the medical establishment. Yes, I know that obstetric violence is real and always happening. Yes, to all of that. And we are also participating in this, right? Because we are creators as human beings. So if we're participating in this, what is it that we need to learn through these experiences? That's how I see that.